Welcome back to the EU Challenger Series. We are excited to honestly bring you our second match of the day between Fnatic Academy and Paris Saint-Germain. Let's have a quick look over these rosters, Vedius, as we get straight on into the action. Fnatic Academy to start us off. In the top lane is Kikis, jungle is Broxah, Niski is their mid laner, Mr. Rala is their AD carry, and Cly their support.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the rift is PSG. Top lane is Steve, their jungler Kyrie, their mid laner Blanc, on AD carry is Pilot, and their support Sprata. I very nearly said LeBlanc then.
You also mispronounced their top laner. I'm pretty sure it's Steve.
Steve, right. Yeah, okay. Yes, as some of you may well have recognized, there are a lot of familiar faces on this PSG lineup. Steve and Sprata actually coming over from Schalke. Definitely experienced players, very talented from what we saw in their last split in the LCS. They did end up getting relegated, so maybe not that talented, but definitely an opportunity for them to redeem themselves right here. And I'm really excited to see that. I'm really excited to see Blanc and Pilot as well. Coming over from Jin Air from Korea, I think that there's a lot of potential to see how well they do here in Europe. Yeah,
Paris Saint-Germain obviously picked up the Huma spot from last season. I really want to bring attention to that Pilot point though, because you say you're excited to see him.
I am really excited today.
There's a lot of Reddit hype about him, a lot of hype sort of in the community saying, you know, he got top of solo queue, he's come over from Jin Air, Green Wings, he's an amazing player. Is there a difference in your mind between the sort of solo queue mentality and the ability to get, you know, really good mechanically and the ability to mesh in a team?
Well, that's one of the things that we'll be looking forward to today, you know, whether or not that has the same sort of impact or whether or not it'll be the deciding factor. Because when you look across at Fnatic Academy, this is a roster that has been together for quite a while now. They've had a lot of time to mesh. They have the Fnatic organization backing them up as well. And we even heard on the analyst desk from Reckless that this challenger team may very well be stronger than the main team right now, given the performance that they've had in their in-house scrims. So with two structured organizations that have put a huge amount of investments into their teams, I think that we are in for a very enjoyable best of two.
Oh, definitely. And I love the fact we've got so many organizations like this in Challenger Series. You know, Schalke, Kingwin, perhaps on the edges of it, Millennium, Misfits Academy. So many teams who have that structural backing, those analysts, those coaches, those fitness coaches. Like Schalke have put a huge amount of time into their fitness, and as I'm sure Paris Saint-Germain and Fnatic Academy do. It's just disappointing that you think that you put time into your fitness. It actually, like, personally, in my heart, it disappoints me.
No, don't worry. In time, it'll all change. It's going to be from Vedius to Shreddius. It's just a matter of time. It all comes down to hard work and getting there.
To Vedius. But yeah, hard work is indeed what it comes down to, and both these two teams seem to have been putting a lot of hard work in, both on social media and in their scrims, as we heard yesterday from Fnatic Academy. I want just to ask you a couple of questions about your highlighted players. So,
go ahead.
Like for me, I think, you know, if you look at Fnatic Academy, Broxah is the player that stands out the most to me. Do you think any differently than that, or do you just agree with me because I'm right?
I completely agree with you. You are indeed correct. I think that you are right. Yes. But Broxah, I think that from what we've seen in the amateur scene, has definitely been someone that has been growing a lot and is that very aggressive jungler, right? The interesting thing when I looked back at some of the CSQ games is that on average, Fnatic were finishing their games in about 30 to 31 minutes. Their longest game was 36 minutes. These guys like to play aggressive. They like to get an early lead and they like to snowball it. And a lot of that came off the back of Broxah and his tendencies. He was well known. He pretty much only played Lee Sin in the qualifiers. This is the kind of guy that will get that early lead and run away with it. And from what we've already seen in the day, champions like Kha'Zix are great ways to do that.
It was banned out against him in that final best of 3 though, and he ended up playing at least in every single one of the games. A lot of people worry that perhaps his champion pool isn't as big as it could be. I think he's got enough to fall back on, but we'll have to see if Paris Saint-Germain are able to pick up on that. We are into picks and bans. PSG on the blue side, Fnatic on the red, and it's Jason Rengar being banned out first.
So Jace has been seeing a lot of popularity in terms of being banned away simply because of the changes to lethality. He is very potent right now, especially if you've seen over in North America, just lethality builds in general are being picked up left, right, and center. And Jace is one of those champions that can be flexed into mid and top, and you just kind of want to get him off the board.
I want to talk about this Syndra because in the first series of today, we saw it neither banned nor picked in either of the 2 games as far as I recall. I know Niski and Blanc can play it pretty well. Why do we see PSG putting so much priority on it?
Well, it could very well be that they're just respecting the possibility from Niski. He was that sort of mid lane that like to play Assassins. Looking back, he played a lot of Ryze, Cassio, and Syndra. So it's something that he, as a player, is very comfortable on. It is still very strong in the meta, even though more answers have come out towards it. And it looks like the PSG are just saying, we're going to target ban some of your comforts. That's why we're seeing Syndra and also the Lee Sin.
A lot of knowledge here from PSG, a lot of respect, as you said, those target bans coming out. Fnatic here trying to work out exactly what their last ban is. Oh no, they're not. Camille is still on the cards. Ban out Camille, Fnatic. Oh, they could leave it open, of course. We have seen some teams do it. We've seen it even get
this
to
morning
the
from
second.
SKT.
Yeah, exactly. But
not today.
No, not today. Camille banned out. I still... We tricked you, man. You activated my trap card.
So now, priority likely to be either... Kha'Zix in my head is sort of the priority that you have to... The fact that Fnatic Academy, we've already talked a lot about early game junglers for Broxah. If you have that Kha'Zix left available, it kind of has to be the priority, especially when Shen is up too. It's a rotation that we've been seeing a lot from a lot of teams internationally, just because of how strong it is.
That's Shen in the top lane, but actually, it's going to be a Ryze locked in straight away here, so Nisqy really wants that. And Broxah's actually going to Ivern, very much a departure from his usual style.
Certainly is, and the fact that they've put so much value on this Ryze as well speaks a lot to the prioritization of Fnatic. They want to have that powerful mid lane, and with Syndra gone, it does give this indication that Ryze becomes the next best tier to pick up in the mid, so Fnatic want to get that high-value mid laner. But the fact that they would go for an early Ivern with Kha'Zix still left up and available is very surprising. We saw in game 1 of the day how easily you can punish that Ivern if you allow a Kha'Zix to run free.
However, Kha'Zix can be banned in the next rotation now because no Kha'Zix pick here from PSG. They've gone instead for the Zyra and the Cassio, rounding out that bottom lane and picking the mid lane counter in towards the Ryze.
I'm also very surprised.
Counter in inverted commas.
I feel as though if you're Fnatic Academy now, you just go for the Shen. You either, I mean, you can also go through the 80 character. Like my draft phase is completely
you're
off.
like 3% on this draft phase thus far.
Wow, they are. I mean, it definitely makes sense. You don't want your 80 carry pinch. Jhin is a very strong 80 carry. We've talked a lot about lethality and how potent it is on the current meta, but as we've already been discussing, junglers now have to be the pinch if you're Fnatic Academy. You want to get Kirei off something that he's comfortable on. In the past, he used to play a lot of Rek'Sai.
Yep.
And now with the Courage of the Colossus nerfs, Rek'Sai's kind of fallen off, so I'm curious as to what he moves towards.
Rek'Sai's still okay. We still do see it in a few games, but as you say, it has fallen off quite a bit. And actually, I wouldn't even be surprised if Fnatic Academy decide to ban that one away as well, because they can just focus on that.
I actually prefer that
jungle.
ban.
Yeah, I like Graves. You're right.
Again, lethality, that's the reason why you're seeing more of him. He scales very nicely. He can match very similarly to the Ivern in the sense that you just want early scaling. You don't really want to go for those early ganks. So you just spend all of your time in the early game just farming, pick up 1 or 2 items, and then what you lack in utility, you certainly make up for in damage.
So PSG have gone for the Fiora and Karma bans here. It's not as focused a second ban phase as we usually see. Usually you're trying to isolate one lane and push them towards an A tier pick rather than an S tier pick or a B tier pick. Here they've split it between top and that support. How much is that going to help them as they get into the next phase?
Well, I feel that it doesn't make a huge amount of sense because the option for Fnatic Academy is the Misfortune. They also could have gone for the Malzahar if they wanted to. They had a lot of freedom, so the fact that they would ban away a Karma, I feel is surprising. One of the biggest surprises to me, though, is the fact that Shen is still up.
No top laners picture.
Yeah, and yes, I definitely think that Kikis could go for something like a counter with the Rumble still being available, but okay, now this draft is very odd. Do
you need a second? I'll talk about it and you can think about what you might actually...
Because, I mean, Zac is something that we've been only seeing from Cersei, from the Unicorns of Love, and a lot of junglers have been very expressive about how weak they feel he is. His early clear is fine, but his ability to gank in the early game is very weak. Now, this is fine. I think this is a perfectly fine draft. The fact that PSG are going for a tanky jungler and then damage in the top lane because they're respecting the possibility of Shen definitely makes sense. Now, if you're Fnatic, you could go for something like a Cannon if you wanted to play into the Rumble, or you just trade off for the fact that, hey, we want more team fighting. So we go for the Mariko or the Shen, and we just go for something scaling that, hey, we might struggle in lane, but with good, we outscale. That's the priority, right?
Wait, you picked 1 out of those 10 picks there.
I got 1.
You got the Maokai just before it was locked in, so well done you. Paris Saint-Germain rounding out their roster, as you said, with that Rumble. Seems very magic damage heavy on that PSG side.
It really, really is. And that's something that they have to factor in because you have to remember that You're going to see a lot of magic resist from the Ivern just naturally, given that you go for the Athene's and Holy Grail, which was buffed in terms of its actual magic resistance that it gets, and you go for a Locket of the Iron Solari, so you're going to naturally have a lot of magic resistance and a lot of shields on the Fnatic lineup. I think the only concern that you have is that Misfortune isn't really considered a damage dealer. You pay her very much for lane. Yes, she's going to build towards that Black Cleaver later on, and she can be effective in those team fights, but the main damage dealers are going to be Jhin and Ryze. And if you shut out one of them, your whole composition loses a lot on damage. So
it feels a lot actually like the Fnatic composition we saw yesterday, where they played the Corki and the Varus and only had those 2 damage dealers, and the Corki got shot down in the early game and they just weren't able to do anything later on.
And it's something that we've seen multiple times in the LCS in general. If you are going to go for like a double tank composition, you kind of need to compensate for that by having this hyper damage support. And that's not to say that Misfortune can't become that, especially with the lethality changes, but that's not to say that it's going to be that easy to get there, you know? So I think that this will be a close matchup. I am looking forward to it.
Are you excited? Are you honestly excited?
No, I am not excited.
I'm looking forward to it a lot as well. You have to feel that these 2 teams are teams that will be near the top of the table.
That's the expectation. Yeah. With the amount of investment that has been put into both these teams, with the organization backbone that both of them have, I think that we're already looking at what could be the 2 teams fighting for that top spot.
Well, we'll have to wait and see as we get into the game, or into the pre-game loading screen. If you think PSG are going to win, make sure you do hashtag PSG win. And if you think Fnatic Academy are going to win, it's hashtag FNA win for them. Make sure you tweet at us as well so we can hear about your hashtag EUCS big plays as they happen. I'm sure all of these players will be looking to make those highlight clip moments.
Tabasco came very close to making a big play. Unfortunately, he ended up giving a double kill over to Katarina, but now there are plenty of other opportunities to try and find that.
So you could say Selfie got the hashtag EUCS.
Maybe, could have been. Yeah. That too. But it's all up to the public to decide. Now,
your vote counts.
Yes, it does.
Every single vote counts. Let's talk a little bit about this bottom lane. We always talk about push pressure in the bottom lane. You know, Varus, Zyra do have relatively good push pressure in the lane with the plants, but MF Jhin as well, perhaps slightly slower on that push.
Well, the good thing is that Misfortune naturally does very well into Zyra because of how easy it is to clear away the plants. So in terms of trading back and forth, the damage output is much stronger from the side of Fnatic, but the actual wave clear is greater for PSG simply because you have the Varus Q, you have the Varus E, you have all of the Zyra skills to help clear through those waves along with the plants to try and force them back. So it should be a fairly even lane. I think it's going to be very reliant on who can get that early level 2 and go for that early push. This is why you're seeing Sproddle move up aggressively. He wants to try and get these plants down so that he can go for that early push and start to play aggressively. And if they get the early level 2, that's where they can get a big swing.
Having Kire play the Zac as well means that he can take that first buff pretty unaided, which allows the Zyra to stand in the lane and get those plants down a little bit easier. We can see, you know, Mr. Rales and Cly were there trying to stop any plants going down early on, and that seed there can actually play quite an impactful role in that lane if it gets procced properly. Broxah might actually go for an invade here on the Ivern, but there is a ward and will spot him out as he goes around, so PSG will know this is happening.
Honestly, good response from PSG to realize the potential early invade from the Fnatic jungler. This means that Kyrie can change his early jungle path to get himself the enemy blue buff, and he shouldn't be at too much of a risk. You just have to be careful of the clear speed from Broxah, because now he's going to be able to rotate back up to his red buff, clear that one out, and it shouldn't be too long for him to then move quickly to his blue. So just something that you have to be aware of.
Actually deciding not to do it. So Kyrie is actually just going to go round instead of trying to get that counter out, because of the vision control from Niskiz he went round. So not going to get that buff, going to be 3-buffed by this Ivern, but it's not the end of the world. XP on those bigger camps was changed quite a while ago, meaning that it's not too detrimental to you if you do lose out one, or no, it is if you lose out both your buffs, but one buff isn't too big.
The biggest problem that you have is that it takes longer for you to get to that level 7 mark, where you have then a couple of points in your E, right? So as a Zac, you want as many points in your slingshot as possible, because then you can use these creative gank paths. So the fact that Brox has denied this experience will delay that, but as you rightly said, it's not necessarily going to hurt him in the early game, because neither of these are really considered early game junglers. It's just the fact that both of them are playing for farm, for scaling, and if you get that early farm, if you get those earlier items before your opponent, then obviously you're going to gain an edge.
Let's see in the bottom lane, you know, PSG pushing in Mr. Rales and Cly here. Half health on both Rales and on Cly, and I think Rales has popped through 2 of his potions or 2 of his biscuits already. So Pilot and Sprattle do have the positional advantage in this lane, and because, as you say, Boxer isn't the most early game jungler, it's going to take him a little bit of time perhaps to come around for an effective gank in the bottom lane.
That's the big thing. You have to keep an eye out on the bottom lane, because the moment Broxer gets full, he could look for a gank in the bottom. There's a lot of vision from the side of PSG, but the level 4 spike from an Ivern is actually quite potent. Especially notice that he's actually got a level advantage over the bottom lane of PSG, and there's a lot of damage from this Misfortune and Jhin very early on, so it's something you have to respect. But fortunately for PSG, that early gank is not going to come out, and the farm continues. So the bottom lane is being pushed in for Fnatic. Their top lane is also being pushed in by the Rumble, but the Ryze has pushed priority in the mid. And it's this Ryze that we really have to keep our eyes on moving into the later stages of the game, because if anyone's going to roam and really open up the map, it will be Nisqy.
He has still gone for Ghost as well, even on 7.2 when it's been nerfed, so still valuing that mobility. Steve might get caught out here by Kickers, has to flash preemptively, didn't want to get caught in that Root Caller or in the Twisted Advance.
Interesting that he actually respects the gank from Broxer, because when you look at it, the double tree combo, honestly, the damage output isn't that monumental. I feel like that he could have gotten away with it, as Rala's now getting exhausted.
Exhaust does come down. Pilot looking for a bit more damage, but again, it's just harass. It's continuous harass, and Kirei was looking perhaps to see if he could jump on in. Decided against it for now. This feels a much more coordinated early game from both these two teams. Less action, more strategical thinking, more understanding of where the enemy's going to be and when they can set up for ganks and set up for these objective pushes.
And honestly, I'm a little bit surprised, because we already talked a little bit about it in Champion Select and coming into this series. Broxer is not this type of player from what we've seen. He was very well known in the amateur scene for being an aggressor. He was the type of player that would go for those invades. He was the type of player that would look to early snowball lanes, and now playing this Ivern, it looks like he's still going for his invades.
Yeah, he is. Straight onto Kirei, puts down the Fend of the Forest, and oh, he stole it away. 68 gold straight in his back pocket. And Kirei spent a long time there. Broxer, you can be aggressive with whatever jungler you want if you know what you're doing.
And it's just so BM. He walks in, he stands there as he's waving to Zach, being like, hello, friend. He puts down his passive, smites, and then just walks away. Just, that would just tilt me so hard. There's nothing that Kirei can do about it either. Absolutely nothing. Yeah,
I think it's worse because it's the candy skin as well. It's just like meant to be this sweet little guy who's, you know, coming around and helping you, but just steals away your jungle.
And it's the way that he walks away, so smug.
Lollops.
Like, yeah,
Lolloping is the worst. All right, fam.
Ivern.
We did see Clyde coming up mid to try and put some pressure on towards Blank as well, but wasn't really able to get anything. Make It Rain didn't connect, so wasn't able to push him back. And still, Fnatic, you know, they're even on CS. Like, it feels very much like they've been behind in this lane, but they're even on CS. They haven't lost too much. They've still got all their summoners, and they've got the Ivern who can come in for ganks at times. I do really think we're going to see a gank pretty soon in this bottom lane, mostly because Boxer's almost 6, Kirei's almost 6, and there's a Mountain Drake down there as well, which is such a vital objective for these teams.
It's happening again.
Lollop, my friend. Lollop straight away. There's nothing being oh no! Oh, you are a disgusting human being, Brox, as he just jumps away. Even shields the damage with the trigger seed as well.
I take it back. Brox is the same as he always has been. This is what he used to do, though. He would just live in the enemy jungle. Unfortunately for him, he's able to do it because Nisqy has push priority in mid, and it's that mid lane that we were talking so much about. He ganked top lane, he forces the flash out of Steve, and that means it's difficult for him to then make the rotation down into the top side of the jungle. So now it's difficult for Kirei because the laners from Fnatic Academy have the priority in the bottom lane. There was that window where Ralaz and Clyde were pushing, and again, it's just Broxer being very smart with when he chooses to go to the invade, because he knows not only will he get the support first from his teammates, but a Zach is not going to punish you very heavily for trying to go for those invades either. So honestly, Broxer doing a great job.
Clyde's been caught here. Sprattle looking for the kill. Exhaust comes down. Kirei with the elastic slingshot. He'll use Flash away as well. But meanwhile, in the top lane, they're going to go in. Twisted Advance. Red Carpet down. Steve is down to half HP, but Kikis is burning and almost falls. Just survives. Will get first blood in the top.
Good gank from Broxer, punishing the no flash on Steve. He knows that Kirei is in the bottom lane, and they get a successful first blood. But now Nisqy, he realizes where Kirei is.
Hello, Kirei. Let's bounce away, says Kirei. He does get himself away from danger pretty quickly. Niski kept his summoners up there as well. There was a temptation to try and ghost down to get something out of it, but kept it up. Just used that movement speed from the Scuttle Crab. And Broxah once again goes in, steals a buff. And actually, he's going to get 4 buffs out of this second rotation away from PSG.
4 buffs do belong to him. It is effectively his entire jungle right now. But the fact
his candy shop.
Yeah, it is indeed. Kirei, though, the fact that he was able to get a gank down in the bottom lane is going to be a good thing later on into the game, given that Klai has no flash now, Rales has no heal. There's the possibility of going for that early dive in the bottom lane.
So, you know how bad it feels when you get a jungle, like a buff stolen by the enemy jungler?
Oh, yes, I do.
You know what feels even worse?
What?
When your buff gets stolen and then the enemy mid laner also gets the same buff.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Niski just walked across and took that spare blue buff that was lying around. So, going to be eternally blued up on that rise.
You can get red buff too if you want.
Yeah, I can just take whatever he wants. Actually, give red buff to Maokai. Extra damage in the trades with Rumble.
I mean, you could.
Health regeneration.
Would you, if you were,
if
you were Ivan, would you give your red buff to your Maokai?
No, because Ivan gets it anyway.
Yeah,
it's going to be better on the Maokai than on the Rise.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think Maokai also attacks
never mind, he got it.
Oh! I should be on the Fnatic analyst staff right there.
Yes, it looks like it.
Yeah, but Kick is actually doing a superb job here, you have to say, to Steve. Considering Rumble is known for pushing tanks in relatively well early game with the Flame Spitter and the sustained damage, he's ahead on CS. Now he's got his Spectre's Cowl and that Corrupting Potion. He's not really taking too much pressure in this lane.
This is why a lot of pro teams actually think it's fine for Maokai to go into Rumble, because you are just going to push. Maokai can play super defensively, and even if he falls behind in the laning phase, his team fight value is still incredibly strong, even at a slight deficit. Whereas the Rumble, he is required to get ahead. His whole purpose is to be, I need to not necessarily get a snowball, but I need to be denying this Maokai so that when these team fights come, I have already hit my item spikes, my team fight value is stronger, and you will not be tanky enough to mitigate the amount of damage that I will be able to output. So the fact that Steve is this far behind is we see a gank in the mid.
Cleansed straight away by Blank. Didn't want any of that. Aims to get himself out of the root caller. I worry perhaps that, you know, you've got a redemption now on Boxer and a lot of sustained damage from Fnatic Academy. Is anyone actually going to be able to burst, anyone from PSG actually going to be able to burst out Fnatic Academy here before that redemption comes down and before they can disengage and re-engage fights?
Well, it's entirely possible when you look at the amount of damage that PSG actually have, because you not only have the Zyra and the Rumble, but then you have the 2 carries of Pilot and Blank, who are going to be hitting very potent mid-game spikes as Klai.
Yeah, hasn't got the flash. You talked about it. Chain of corruption, and it's a chain of death for Klai. However, Blank not going to land a petrifying gaze, doesn't have the cleanse, doesn't have the escape from Daisy apart from the flash. It's not going to be enough. Niski takes him down.
Really good plays from Broxah as Kirei going for a gank in the bottom, but prioritizing just that tower. Right. So
it's difficult to prioritize anything else because there was nothing else
exactly
there.
That. So good stuff from the side of PSG, getting that first tower blood.
Teleport coming in here. Curtain Call has been open. They're looking for an encore after the turret falls. Kirei, twisted advance, not quite going to catch him. Niski flashes in, as does Broxah. Pilot is the target, and Pilot will fall to his death as well, taken out by Fnatic Academy. Meanwhile, Steve is trying to get some damage on this top lane tower, but Rumble doesn't really damage towers too quickly.
After the quick gank from Broxah in the mid lane, he was very aware of what was going on in the bottom, so they made the rotation. Niski used his ultimate to close the gap as quickly as he could, and they end up getting the punishment. They get themselves 1 kill. They could have gone for a Mountain Drake, decided instead to get a bit of deep vision down, and they're actually looking to get a bit of damage down onto this tower. So no objectives are actually going to be gained from the side of Fnatic Academy, which I think honestly is a bit of a mistake, because when you look at the gold, PSG are actually still even.
Oh yeah, because of that first tower, and because they've been able to push a little bit of a CS lead in a couple of lanes, they have taken that advantage. Let's have a look at this fight in the bottom lane again. PSG getting the turret first.
So just before this, you did have the gank mid lane. Want to give props to Broxah for his actual play of that, but then Kick gets with the TP. He uses the root actually a little bit too early, because he wanted to follow Kirei to then be at the very end of the jump so that he could then CC the entire team. But regardless, they're able to land the initial CC down onto Pilot. He does not have any escapes left, and he ends up dropping. So Fnatic get themselves a return kill. But as we talked about, the gold is still very even. PSG have a lot more control in the map, and they can actually move to set up a 1-3-1. If they wanted to, they could have Pilot and Spraddle move to the mid lane. You just send Blanc off to a side lane. He should be able to hold his own against Niski, and he has a tower for defense should he need it. And because he doesn't need the TP, if the Dragon were to start, he could then make a movement for it.
Can he hold his own against Niski at the moment? There's a Rod of Ages against him. He has got an Abyssal of his own. When that Rod of Ages starts getting stacked, I'd be worried for the Cassiopeia that the Rise can just, burst her down with that consistent damage from the Overload.
I mean, I think it's a bit of a skill matchup because remember that both of them have skill shots, right? If Cassio misses a single Q, then she's going to lose a lot of her damage output. If Niski misses a single of his Qs, he's going to lose out on his damage output. You also have to dodge the Cassio ultimate. There's the cleanse. I feel like right now it would still be in favor of the Cassio because her damage is a little bit more reliable in the sense that you can throw down Miasma and then just like machine gun style.
I realised you turned into a hamster for a second there.
That's what it's called. It's the hamster chain.
Hamster chain.
The hamster attack. But yeah, that's why I would give it ever so slightly in favor to Blanc. But for the time being, the fact that PSG have been able to maintain a good gold lead from the early ganks that we saw from Broxah, I think is promising for the side of PSG.
And it is, they have got that Mountain Drake as well, so they can perhaps look towards sieging up this mid tower. However, it's very difficult to siege into the bushes that come out. There is the bullet time as well, just to clear out the wave from Clyde. He hasn't really got any damage yet on that build. We do see some MFs going either Watchers into the Black Cleaver, could just be a Black Cleaver rush here as well.
So far, no swords.
Yeah, no swords at all. That's quite disappointing. We had a lot, because Mr. Rales and Pilot both picked up their Yumu, so they would have had quite a few swords, but now they just have one each.
We're actually seeing Pilot go for the Lethality build as opposed to the teamfight one that we saw earlier on in the day. This one I actually prefer. Mainly his damage comes from the poke. His teamfight damage is not as good, and what you have to remember is that Lethality kind of sucks versus tanks because it's flat. Whereas it's incredible against squishies because it puts you into negative armor values. So if you have 0 armor and someone has 45 lethality, you now have minus 45 armor, which is where all this horrendous poke comes from.
Technically not how it works because it's 6. You get 6.
Oh yeah, but assuming if you're level 18, right, with the whole lethality max
color
level
casters
thing.
need to say things correctly. I'm just saying. Yes, but yeah, working at negative armor is incredibly impactful and gives you that massive damage output that you were talking about. PSG, however, held their own pretty well. You could look at the scoreboard and say, why aren't Fnatic Academy further ahead? And the answer is PSG have played the map slightly better, getting that first tower, getting that first Drake. Mountain helps them out so much as they get later on into the game. There's a point, I think, with PSG as well where they spike incredibly powerfully as a team. When you get 2 items on Varus, 2 items on Cassio, 2 items on Rumble, your team fight is incredibly impactful. And Fnatic Academy tend to be a little bit later, perhaps half an item or so later on.
Well, I'd actually argue that they both spike at about the same time. Rales, I'm curious as to whether or not he goes for the Duskblade second or whether or not he goes to the Edge of Night. I've seen a couple of variations depending on what the Jhin values more, whether they want that early magic resistance, which would make sense against the composition that he's going up against from PSG. But if you just want that more damage, then you can just rush the Duskblade of Drakthar. But the thing is, I feel like the damage is a little bit safer from Fnatic because you have this front line of Rise in the sense that you have all this utility support from Broxah that it enables you to just chunk out all this damage. And we saw this from G2 actually earlier in the week where the Rise just would not die. You follow that up with the Misfortune ultimate and you have a Jhin on the backline just shooting out his curtain call, then I actually think that the Fnatic Academy damage is actually just a little bit safer, whereas PSG need to close the gap. They need to set up a flank. They need to have that Rumble ult lay onto you, and there's a lot more setup as Clyde gets caught out.
Will flash away as well. Trigger Seed down. Look at the damage from the arrow downtown. Kick is caught out a little bit by Steve as well, trying to join the fight. Here is Kickers in the front line. Pilot so low. Curtain call comes down as Kirei gets locked out of the fight as well. PSG will retreat, but they lose Pilot straight away in the fight. Pilot
getting caught out of position once again. Honestly, good response from Kickis where he could have been the one caught out. He turns it around on PSG. They end up getting the kill, and now they're looking at this tier 1 in the mid lane. They do currently have the kill advantage, but the gold still stays the same because Fnatic yet to take any objectives on the map. First Dragon of the game went over to PSG, first tower. But have a look at this. Spraddle ends up catching Clay out of position because of all the deep vision that they have in the top side of the jungle. The flank comes in from Kikis, his focus is on Pilot, and he honestly just wants to get away as fast as he can, but he gets CC'd for so long that the damage combined with Rallis and Kikis is enough to shut him down. And then they're not quite able to get anything else off the back of this. They can't turn this into a tower. The wave crew is still very strong on the side of PSG. And there are no objectives on the map for them to take.
A lot of that felt like PSG just not pulling the trigger when they needed to. They still had Chain of Corruptions, perhaps used Stranglethorn a little bit too early in all honesty, just to try and catch out one member. And the Equalizer came down right at the end of the fight. There was a great moment when Fnatic Academy were funneling down next to that top of the mid side. And if you put an Equalizer down there, you just stop any ability for Rallis to open up the curtains, for the bullet time to come down, and stop them actually being able to take out Pilot. But Fnatic Academy were able to get that kill, and now have actually started to have a little bit of a gold lead. It's only 300, it's not much at all, but signs of an advancing of that lead for them. It's now 100, okay, they've lost it.
100 gold doesn't really mean much at this point in the game. Just a couple of CS here or there. But now if you are PSG, you have to look at what moves you can make on the map. I feel like if you're Varus, that being that overextended in the mid lane is a bit dangerous. You should generally try to keep Zyra with you, but the focus for PSG is to just try and get this tier 1 in the top lane down. They've already taken down the tower in the bot. They have the Rumble teleports, so they can just keep in there to deal with the Maokai. But just because they have the Zyra and the Zac, that's actually enough to force Nisqy back. And he's afraid because of how much vision control they actually have in the jungle. Note that every time Fnatic wanted to move through the jungle, they had to take the long-winded path around.
I want to bring attention back as well. Fnatic Academy in CSQ were known as the macro team. They were known as the team that can take your turrets 1, 2, 3, then shut you out, do a 1-3-1, play the composition however they want to play it, and shut you out of the game by denying vision, by denying objectives, and by taking those early towers. Here we see them go 2 towers and a dragon behind, and even though they're getting kills, they're not getting anything out of it.
Well, this is the problem for Fnatic right now. They're not getting enough kills, they're not getting enough setup to force these objectives, whereas PSG are managing the waves incredibly well. They're utilizing strong sides of the map and those early advantages that they had accrued to try and pick up these objectives. Now they know that Ryze is top, and this is another example of that. Yes, they're going to lose a tower, but they're going to get the dragon. Ryze is going to take his time clearing this turret, so now PSG actually have priority on the mid lane. So this is the next objective they can look to set up for. And honestly, it feels like PSG are actually a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to Fnatic. Yes, they're getting caught out. Yes, Fnatic Academy are doing a good job of punishing overextensions and forcing these fights. But it is actually PSG that are making the better map movements, the ones that are getting the objectives on the board. And the fact that they are 2 towers up to 1, and it was the fact that they were the ones always forcing those and trading objectives whenever they lose one, is a good sign for PSG.
Boxer has now finished that Locket of the Iron Solari alongside the Redemption, so he's basically fully built on that Ivan. Perhaps just needs Natheens as well to lock alongside that for that extra shielding and extra healing. Alongside that, looking at the Ryze, you know you've got the Abyssal Scepter, a fully stacked Rod of Ages, and that tier stacking up. At the moment, I think, you know, it's still a skill matchup between him and Blank, but as the time progresses, I think, you know, eventually perhaps Nisqy will have the advantage in that split push position.
I think it's a tough one to call. I think that the great thing about Cassio into Ryze is that it always is fairly even. Even when both are at 6 items, because you have to remember that Blanc doesn't have to buy boots, so you actually get an actual flat item, whereas Nisqy will only have the cooldown reduction from his boots. But it is very skill matchup dependent, because if you miss any of your skill shots, then it's going to very heavily swing it. But this is why Cassio has always been considered a pretty good pick into the Ryze, because of how well she can do and how well she sort of matches his scaling. The difference is really the amount of utility and the ease of play. Ryze is just a champion that has way more options with his ultimate. He has much more reliable pick potential because of his Rune Prison, and he just naturally has more mobility. So as a champion, he just offers a little bit more to his team than, say, a Cassio necessarily would.
Here he's going to jump in onto Broxer. Stranglethorn's down, Trigger Seed, Let's Bounce knocks him out. Here's the Redemption trying to heal himself back up. Does get a bit, but it's not enough to keep him safe from Blanc. Curtain called down, Nisqy's joined the fray with the Realm Warp, dodges out the Petrifying Gaze. The red carpet comes down as Equalizer joins the back of the fight. Kick is chasing onto Pilot. Kirei low has to flash the wall, and PSG are all on the retreat. Fnatic take down 2 and only lose 1. Pilot still being chased here by Kikis. He's not giving this one up. Straight underneath the tower, gets the kill, gets the double. Kire's gonna try and delay him. Steve's here as well, but Niski wants a bit of this. He wants a bit of action. He's tanking up the turret. Steve goes low, does eventually fall. Kikis with the triple, and Kire can do nothing but jump away.
Kikis did not care whatsoever about those towers. Level 14, only completed the Sunfire and the Spirit's Visage, but that is all you need to be this super tank of Maokai. And honestly, it is because of him that they were able to so easily win out these fights. Fnatic Academy getting themselves one tier 1 in the mid, potentially getting another one in the tier 2. But with Spraddle's appearance, it's going to be enough to dissuade them. So look at how this fight all kicks off. Broxah is the initial target. Maokai is just about to go back to base. He doesn't initially TP in. The chain CC is beautiful. He gets knocked up into the miasma. He can't flash away, and he ends up going down. Not that many ultimates were actually invested, as I stand corrected. Now Blanc misses his ulti. Kikis gets another beautiful flank, and he just basically forces the entire PSG lineup to split away. Pilot can't stay in the fight. Spraddle gets a really weird flash. Steve can't impact anything on the side. And Kyrie's just doing absolutely nothing in the fights. And at this point, Kikis like, I can still dive this tower. I can still kill you. I'm full health. 1 tower shot, 2 tower shots, 3 tower shots, 4 tower shots, 5 tower shots. He's still healthy. And then he gets the rest of his support from his team. In total, he ends up taking 7 tower shots, to which he then walks away.
He did use his passive twice in that fight as well, though, so the healing coming out from that is quite impactful.
But that's
yeah,
just really,
seven tower
the
shots is just
potency of
crazy.
Maokai is just incredible. And it just backtracks to what we were talking about. Yes, he may have struggled in the lane, which in all honesty, he didn't that much, but his scaling, his potency in these latest team fights is what makes Maokai still an incredibly strong pick.
And he's now got 10 stacks on his Dark Seal as well, so that's...
Hey, what? All right, fair enough. Medjai's incoming.
That would be amazing.
I mean, he doesn't die. We've already proven that
yeah,
fact.
I still don't think he can build Medjai's. But it's a game of inches, though, because if you look at that, if Petrifying Gaze hits Kikis and Niski, that fight is entirely different, because PSG are actually able to take it. If the Let's Bounce perhaps doesn't knock Broxah out of the Stranglethorns, the fight is entirely different, because they can kill him just that ever so slight bit quicker. It feels a little bit like PSG just didn't quite coordinate it as well as they could have done, and Fnatic were willing to pounce.
Honestly, it's it was a good pick from PSG. Their chain CC onto Broxah was really well played. It was just the flank from Kikis once again. I really want to praise Kikis because he has now done this multiple times in this game. He has always found that window of opportunity where he just gets the beautiful target focus down. And I think that Kikis was a player that, you know, we have to remember he did leave G2, he joined Fnatic, he didn't have the best performance on Fnatic, joined Fnatic Academy, and initially he wasn't even that promising. But now we're seeing a very talented individual. This is more of the Kikis than what we saw back when he was originally on G2, and he's doing a fantastic job.
Steve caught out here, Realm Warp's going to come in as well. There's the Deadly Flourish. He puts down the Equalizer, but you can't equalize this fight. Steve is dead, and Kikis is dominating.
Another good collapse from the Fnatic Academy lineup. They now have so much more map control off the back of winning that team fight earlier. The gold lead isn't insurmountable, but they are just playing these team fights so beautifully that PSG are really struggling to answer. A lot of it backtracks, I feel, to this Zac pick. I'm still yet to see it have an immense amount of value. But that's not to say that they can't get that one big team fight, get that turnaround play that can bring them back into this game.
They've got the composition to do it as well. Yeah. Equalizer, Stranglethorns, Petrifying Gaze, Chain of Corruption, Let's Bounce, you know, they all work so well in an engaged, disengaged team fight where you're trying to duck in and dodge out a little bit. This is going to be the first Dragon of the game for Fnatic. It's only a Crown Drake, so it's not too impactful for them. We'll help them, you know, get around the map ever so slightly quicker, but it's not the end of the world that PSG lose this. However, it feels now like Fnatic are starting to hit that power spike you talked about, just that slight bit quicker than PSG.
Oh yeah, they definitely have. Just look at the itemization from Rallis. Has decided to go for more of the damage build, and Niski has now completed his 3 core items, with the Seraph's Embrace completed, the Rod of Ages fully stacked, and the Abyssal Scepter done. To just add insult to injury, remember, we talked a lot about how there was a lot of magic damage. The itemization makes a lot of sense. And when you have all the support from Broxah and Kikis as a frontline too, it's very difficult to shut down this Rise.
Speaking of itemization against magic damage, it looks like it's a Hex Drinker coming out from Mr. Rales as well. So even more magic resist for the team, and that shield as well, keeping him a little bit safer. Could, of course, be an Edge of Night as well.
You actually get a surprising amount of magic resistance from that item too, so definitely a worthy pickup, and it synergizes nicely with the build. Part of the reason as to why Jhin has become so popular and potent in the current meta. But looking across the board, if you're Fnatic now, Baron is the name of the game. You want to be setting up a lot of deep vision. You want to try and force PSG to come and check to try and clear out this vision. Then you can either get a pick, or maybe they just get too afraid and the Baron gets rushed down by Fnatic Academy. They have a lot of options. I feel as though you should potentially send Kikis down to the bottom lane, or you can just rush the Baron.
Just go for it. There is a ward in the pit, though. It has been spotted out now. Baron down to 8,000. Here's the TP in by Steve. Fnatic immediately disengage, realize they don't want this one, and back themselves away. You don't really want to be fighting when Baron is pounding down on you as well. PSG with the TP do have to burn it. It means Kikis now has the push priority in towards Steve, because of course he's still got his teleport up. And Fnatic can just reset and wait again for that Baron fight.
I'm not entirely sure why Fnatic decided to just force it. Yes, you get the TP out of Steve, so now if you send Kikis to a side lane, Steve has to sort of make a decision where he goes, do I go side lane or do I stick around for the Baron? In that respect, it was pretty good, but at the same time, I feel as though Fnatic could have just played the bait game, you know? There was the possibility of getting that pick by just clearing out all the Baron vision. You can see right now on the mini-map, PSG have just been allowed to reclaim all of that vision because Fnatic go towards the Baron, they then immediately disengage, and they lose a lot of control. So perhaps they just wanted to force that TP. Maybe that was their main objective, in which case they were successful. And now you can see Kikis in the bottom lane actually building up a pretty big wave. And now they're starting to clear out the vision. So this is more of what I wanted to see from Fnatic.
But getting the TP out does allow them to do this a little bit easier as well, because Kikis now has the advantage in that lane. He's got Iceborne Gauntlet as well, so just can push this turret down pretty easily, in all honesty. We'll take that down, backs away to make sure he's not being collapsed upon. PSG with a double control ward, just making sure they've really got that point locked down. Kire's going to jump in onto Boxer Blank with the miasma, trying to get the damage down on towards his Ivan. Chain of Corruption comes out as well, but Mr. Rales happy to open up the curtains as the call comes out. Fnatic won the fight. Kikis with the flank once again, straight onto Blank, cleanses away. Daisy knocked up, and Fnatic disengage. It's a lot used there by PSG, but also by Fnatic. They use the TP and the flash from Kikis. So they might just turn around to Baron and say, we've got to go for this now.
Well, Blank is chunked out very heavily. Ultimate was used from Blank and from Pilot, which is going to make fighting around this Baron very difficult. But if the Baron damage is enough, maybe PSG can get something.
PSG stepping forward, of course, the bushes, locking out that Baron from their vision. Kire is off towards the side, Blank low, Niski jumps in, but the Seraphs is huge, and the Petrifying Gaze takes him out. Fnatic now engaging onto the backline, Pilot's dead. Kire the new target, Fnatic just unstoppable as Kikis dives in once again. They'll take out Kire, they'll take down Pilot, and they'll take their road back towards the Baron once again.
The initial flash from Niski was so risky, and he ends up getting punished so heavily for it. But fortunately for Fnatic, PSG end up splitting up. Now, as a three-man squad, can they stop this Baron?
This is not over yet. Kikis very healthy. Boxer there as well. PSG looking for the push. Kikis walks into the miasma. Baron is only at 7,000. They haven't got the rise. They haven't got that sustained damage output to take it down, and they have to back away. PSG force them away.
This is very promising for PSG. The fact that they're able to deny that Baron from Fnatic, allow more time for the TP cooldown to come back up, is the best situation that they could have hoped for. Very unfortunate for PSG as a whole, in the sense that that could have been a one-team fight, but then as Fnatic Academy decide to engage, they split up. So you have 3 members running through the jungle, the other 2 members running towards mid lane, and if they had just been able to stay together, if they had a little bit more room and freedom, then PSG may very well had more of an opportunity to close out that fight and maybe get themselves the Baron. But what you're seeing is, it is not entirely over yet for PSG. They have a good team fight composition. The Cassio still does a lot of damage, especially with 4 items completed. Niski has no flash available, and if they can just catch him out, then PSG could potentially swing this game around.
part of it comes down to that equalizer placement as well. It hasn't been the most impactful of ultimates in some of these fights. It's been, okay, but it hasn't been that ultimate that divides the team, that separates them in half and forces PSG forward and forces Fnatic back. Steve now has the Leandries, the Zhonyas, and the Void Staff, so he will be looking for those huge equalizers. He'll be looking to get into that front line. Fnatic Academy currently looking to see if they can catch out Kire, but not going to be able to collapse on him. Once again, they just step forward, get their vision line up, and deny any vision that PSG might have had around the Baron.
Honestly, the problem for PSG is the amount of magic damage they have. Look at all this magic resistance coming out from Fnatic as they now look to rush down the Baron.
Got a little bit of vision on it. Kire is here. It looks like Fnatic Academy are going to disengage because Pilot is dead! Caught out, the Realm Warp in, and now Steve, the new target. Equalizer comes down, but once again, isn't gonna do a whole lot. Steve taken out by Kikis. He is legendary on this Maokai, and Fnatic Academy will finally secure the Baron.
Honestly, you have to criticize Pilot for this game. He has been caught out a fair number of times. He had his flash. He knew that the W from Jin was going to be coming out. He could have looked to just avoid it, and he doesn't. I'm not even sure why Pilot is the first member walking towards that Baron pit. Many question marks surrounding his positioning and play so far from this game, but nothing can be taken away from Fnatic Academy's ability to collapse on that fight. The Rise ultimate being used to set up the flank, to get all the kills necessary in order to take down the Baron, and now looking incredibly decisive, they are moving towards trying to break into the base of PSG.
About 2/3 of people thinking that PSG would take this one. Currently probably sitting at the edge of their seats because it looks very much Fnatic at the moment.
It certainly does. So see, all of the vision is denied from PSG. Pilot getting caught out there by walking onto the trap from Jin, followed up by the Deadly Flourish. Thanks to the ultimate from Niski, they're able to catch Steve out of position. Blanc is nowhere near to be able to fight. Kire doesn't even decide to go for a steal because he's denied all that vision. And honestly, it's just a matter of PSG saying, what can we do? Like, they've tried to force these fights. If members keep getting picked off, as Pilot has so many a time, it becomes very difficult for Fnatic to... Oh, sorry, it becomes very difficult for PSG to really get the fights that they want.
Definitely, and you have to think, Pilot, this isn't solo queue. You can't be face checking as an AD carry. Don't follow double lifts example, follow the example of good AD carries and perhaps stand a little bit further back. Blanc is, he's got some damage onto Kikis, who does have to flash away. That is the flash burn on the Maokai. Mr. Rales once again puts the curtain call down. Equalizer is used. Niski tanking up the turret for a little bit. Kly's here as well. Perhaps PSG can collapse slightly on this. Seraph's now used by Niski. It's a lot of summoners and a lot of spells used here by Fnatic Academy, but still, Redemption comes down. Everyone's going to be back up almost to full HP. And PSG need to just turtle under their turret. But Kire says he doesn't want to do that. Mr. Rales jumped on. Miasma comes down as well. Broxer dead. Mr. Rales dead as well. Kikis once again looks for the flank, but thinks a lot better of it and retreats away. Fnatic lose 2, and PSG live to fight another day.
This is what we wanted to see from PSG, getting that creative slingshot from Kire to just dive onto the backline, knock Rolles out of position into the immediate follow-up from Blanc. You cannot escape from that miasma once you are locked into it, and there is enough damage on the side of PSG to net themselves the kill. This is going to dissuade Fnatic from continuing their siege, and it's going to buy PSG a little bit more time to come back into this game.
Steve immediately flashes away there from the bullet time, respecting the fact that Niski could have been around the corner. 3 members of Fnatic still, hanging around. They haven't really backed all the way off as sometimes we see teams do. They still have that Baron buff on, MF and Rise in the Maokai, so they can still continue to put some pressure down. Just waiting on Broxer and Mr. Rales to respawn before they can perhaps step forward once again and try and siege one of these turrets.
Big problem for Fnatic now is that they will actually lose their Baron. They will have gained a little to nothing off the back of that objective. And even though they do have a very solid gold lead, the wave clear from PSG is incredibly potent. They have a very strong scaling composition. Look at this Rumble. His damage cannot afford to be underestimated at this point in the game. The Casio as well. And you get to see it right here. When you get these creative uses of the slingshot, it becomes very difficult for actually Rales to escape because he ends up taking a chunk of damage from the equalizer initially. He's already pretty low. Then Kire, there's no way you can spot this from happening. From all the way over the walls, straight onto the primary target that you want, immediately knocked up into the miasma. There's no room for him to escape, and Broxer just can't provide the shields enough. to keep his AD carry alive, and without any utility for himself, he ends up dropping too. So if PSG can get another fight like that, there's no reason why they can't claw their way back into the game.
We've been speaking of flank potential from Kickers for the entire game pretty much, but the flank potential from Kire is absolutely massive if he can position himself quickly, as you've been saying. Kickers once again down towards that bottom lane, 8-0-3, one of the tankiest Melkors I've seen in a long, long time, with that GA finish now as well. And the Realm Warp by Fnatic just for positional advantage. The quicker translation down towards the bottom lane means that they will be able to take this tower.
Really nice rotation from Fnatic Academy. Like the fact that they punish PSG for posturing a little bit too long in their jungle, trying to just reclaim vision, look for a potential pick. Enables Fnatic to get the bot tier 2 tower as Kali is forced to flash away.
One by one, summoners are just being burnt by Kire, charging up an elastic slingshot and aiming for one individual target. A couple of times Kali has been slightly mispositioned this game, but he has been able to get away with that flash. PSG need to look to punish that, need to look to try and get something out of the fact, you know, Mr. Rales doesn't have flash, Broxah doesn't have flash, Kickis doesn't have flash. They need to see if they can set something up, because bit by bit, Fnatic are eking their way ahead in this game. It's now an 8,000 gold lead.
Eking their way? They're miles ahead, mate.
Yeah, but it took them a long time to get miles ahead.
I mean, it certainly did. One of the biggest problems for Fnatic has been their ability to siege. Their composition isn't great at sieging. There are strengths to diving, but there's always a risk when you go for a dive, especially against someone like a Rumble. Their plays around the Baron was very promising, but now they have to be careful again. Kire looking for that flank.
Mr. Rales is the target, will get jumped on there. Oh, the grasping boots, and there's Mr. Rales just dead. Blank. Makes a blank space where Mr. Rales once was, and Nisqy and Kickers have to retreat. They were pushing the side waves, but they need to get back here and try and defend.
Second time PSG has now made this move, and it has worked out. They're looking to do it once more on Broxah.
They are. Broxah won't fall for that deception. Kly's actually looking for an interesting flank here. He has been pinged out. Feel perhaps like he was just trying to delay away from getting there, but it was a very odd position from him, and they give up the turret. Here comes the bullet time. I think it was used there. I think it was used.
It?
No, I think he went through the full animation, but the Make It Rain kind of sometimes interacts with it, interestingly.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure the full bullet time did come down. Wasn't able to catch anyone out. PSG now looking towards the Elder. Double Cloud and a Mountain for them. Fnatic want to stop this, though. PSG down to 4,000 HP. Kick is still with the flank. Kire jumps in, trying to get the smite down. Oh! Smite goes to Broxah, and he wins that one out. He'll get chained, but he'll be very happy to get that Elder Drake steal.
No idea why PSG decided to go for the 50-50 smite. They're in a 5 versus 4. They have a fantastic team fighting composition, and they don't try and force the fight. Instead, they just go for the 50-50. They end up losing it, and now all those small advantages that they've been slowly getting for themselves have just kind of been thrown out the window, as Fnatic Academy are looking to get a pick onto Blank.
Realm Warp onto Blank. Kire here. Nisqy the only one to follow it up. Dodges the Petrifying Gaze. Kickers chases him with a Twisted Advance, and now the curtains have opened. Sprattle caught out. Nisqy dodging around the side, but Kickers is just that frontline tank. A kill for Rales. Kickers still going in, still advancing, still pushing onto Blank. Will take him down as well. And Kickers just walks away, happy as anything. Eventually the GA is popped, but he'll still might just about be taken down. He jumps back onto Pilot. Kire low. He'll get taken into that Bloodborne. Pilot goes down as well to Rales. Gets himself a double. Kire will die. And Fnatic Academy will be able to close out this game very comfortably at the end.
Fnatic Academy get the cleanup fight. They have the Elder Dragon, and they have a big enough minion wave in the top lane to move towards the Nexus and close out game 1 of this best of 2.
Great play by Fnatic, stealing, wow, that was an interesting vocal thing. Stealing away the Elder Drake, taking the Nexus towers down. They'll go 1-0 up over PSG. And PSG seem to have a mountain to climb to get back into this series.
Honestly, props to Fnatic Academy. The early game was what we expected from Broxah. Perhaps not on the right champion, perhaps not on the thing that we initially expected him to really be aggressive on, but I think that that took nothing away from his playstyle, stealing away so many jungle buffs, so many camps. You saw he had a 2-level advantage on his jungle adversary in the later stages of the game, and he facilitated a lot of the success that Fnatic Academy found in the early game. The problem was that PSG were making a lot of great map movements. They were still staying even in gold, even after all the kills that Fnatic Academy were able to get, and it resulted in the game being dragged out to what was eventually the Baron, and that's really where things started to snowball in the favor of Fnatic Academy.
It just felt a little bit like PSG didn't play the early game quite as well as they could have done. A few people got caught out, like especially, I say early game, kind of the mid game, when things actually started really happening in the fight. Pilot kept getting caught out. Sputter was using his Stranglethorns very aggressively a lot of the time instead of for the disengage that comes with the Zyra, and they just kept getting engaged on, and Kickers, he played an absolute blinder.
Oh, he did.
On that Maokai.
That was a very impressive performance from Kickers. Nothing but respect for him. It was really enjoyable to see him have such a massive impact on that Maokai, and you can see why they put so much value on it, because to be honest, like, he did a great job that game.
Yeah, I think he ended something like 10-0-3 or something crazy.
He
Absolutely
didn't even die.
Great play by him all round. Well, we're going to go to a quick break as we ready ourselves to get into the second game here between Fnatic Academy and PSG. Make sure you stay tuned, because if that first game is anything to go by, it's going to be an absolute stormer. But meanwhile, in the top lane, they're going to go in. Twisted advance, red carpet down. Steve is down to half HP, but Kickers is burning and almost falls, just survives. Kickers caught out a little bit by Steve as well, trying to join the fight. Here is Kickers in the front line. Pilot so low. Curtain Call comes down as Kirei gets locked out of the fight as well. Curtain Call down. Niski's joined the fray with the Realm Warp. Dodges out the Petrifying Gaze. The red carpet comes down as Equalizer joins the back of the fight. Kick is chasing onto Pilot. Kirei low has to flash the wall, and PSG are all on the retreat. Kirei is off towards the side. Blank low. Niski jumps in, but the Seraphs is huge, and the Petrifying Gaze takes him out. Fnatic now engaging onto the backline. Pilot's dead. Kirei the new target. Fnatic just unstoppable as Kickers dives in once again. Kirei is here. It looks like Fnatic Academy are going to disengage because Pilot is dead. Caught out, the Realm Warp in, and now Steve the new target. Equalizer comes down, but once again isn't going to do a whole lot. Steve taken out by Kickers.
Fnatic Academy get the cleanup fight. They have the Elder Dragon, and they have a big enough minion wave in the top lane to move towards the Nexus and close out game one of this best of two.